Welcome to Insight with Savvy and Shays. My partner, Chad Tongo. I'm Rob Brinkman. So, Chad, Aaron Rafferty, and Martin Sims, these are buddies of yours from Southern Cal.
Yes.
And look, they're very smart, very entrepreneurial. If you are trying to stay on the cutting edge of anything technology, subscribing to the tech buzz is a prudent thing to do. But here's one of the questions I have. I come from the whole Wall Street days, and you in private equity, and when you hear about tech, everything's so focused in Northern California versus Southern California. And what's interesting is going back to the 80s and 90s, when all the private equity firms, the VC firms, all that investment banking money, proximity to the money center, Wall Street, was
Yep.
what was important. But then as time went on, right, as you moved into the 2000s and then the teen 2000s, it was less about proximity to Wall Street and more proximity to the IP, the intellectual property, which really opened up places like Austin and Pittsburgh and obviously Silicon Valley, the Northeast. But Southern Cal, why there?
Yeah, absolutely. And the impetus, to your point, right, of money moving towards California is really the semiconductor movement, and the growth of that particular industry. So, yes, although Northern California and Silicon Valley is known globally to be the technology center of the world, if you will, arguably, Southern California has its own hub, particularly in Orange County, Irvine, Newport Beach. A lot of HQs there from fintech to tech and financial services organizations. So, you know, tech buzz, Martin and Aaron, they're based in Irvine, which is in Orange County.
Got it. Okay, all right. Without further ado, let's bring on Aaron and Martin.
Let's do it.
Aaron Rafferty, Martin Sims. You guys have got it going on. You guys are friends and go way back with Savvy. So, Chad, how did you originally meet these two guys?
And we go back, I'd say, a few years ago now, and it was a project that had everything to do with DAOs, Web3, crypto, blockchain, the whole shebang. And I think upon, I'd say, the initial hour of meeting, that conversation went on till I'd say another 4 or 5 more hours, and that was it. Game over. We just thought we're like-minded individuals. We all three come from the beautiful land of Southern California, um, and we've just stayed in touch since.
Yeah, I'm sure there was no adult beverages involved in that 4 or 5 hour stint. I'm sure of that. All right,
No
so
much
I
blood.
want to know more about you two, right? So you guys, how now? Look, the Tech Buzz, I think, is a brilliant platform. I want to know how it originally started, and then it's grown. It's like an onion, right? You just every time I go and I peel back a little bit more and get to know you guys, there's more dynamic stuff going on. So we want to really dive into that stuff. But way back, how the heck did you guys even meet?
Yeah, I'll let you take it. Yeah, so normally Martin will take this part, so he'll probably chime in here. But actually, we met at a party. My wife's best friend's husband, it was his birthday, and Martin was friends with this guy, and we just connected at this party. Martin was actually throwing the party, and I was sitting by my. I'm not a big partier, uh, other than when I get with Chad there in Chicago, um, and we. I wasn't really doing much, and Martin came up, and typical Martin, he has to know everyone and everything about everybody. And he got to know kind of the things that I was thinking about. And at the time, this was a pretty peak DeFi bull run. And so I was thinking a lot about crypto. I was doing a lot of stuff in the crypto markets. And that kind of set the tone for our relationship, which obviously a lot of business happens between us, but there was some fun stuff too. And we dug in starting in that vein, which was how do you make as much money in the crypto market as possible? But really, it went beyond that because we had a lot of similar interests, similar experiences. Our families came from similar regions of the country, just stuff that not a lot of people had in common. He works out a lot. I used to work out a lot, things like that. So we we got down that track, and we pretty much never looked back, and we continued to dive deeper into business together.
Well, and
Right.
there's a little bit more to that story. So, this guy was sitting in the corner. I had to come up to him and just start chatting him up. But yeah, he was really a crypto savant at the time, in these like areas that were completely new. Literally, these people were writing the book on crypto, and he was one of those guys that was actually doing it. And so, I came in more from a traditional finance perspective. That was my career path. And there was a lot of things that were interesting me about that space. And he had all the great alpha on that. And so about 2 months after that party, I just hit him up. I called him one day and I said, "Hey, I want you to take my money and I want you to put it into some of these, crypto tokens you've been talking to me about." And he was like, "No," he's like, "I'm not going to do that. You're going to, come in and learn about, everything that I'm doing." And effectively from there, he started this little think tank that started just him and I. And quickly, like 2 months in, we were at about 40 people in this think tank that were meeting once a week. And we are talking about, all the tokens and, this and that. And so I think like it's interesting because a lot of the things that we've done, it's never been forced, right? It's just happened. It's just a progression that we're here now and we might as well, do that. I think Tech Buzz is definitely like that as well, right? We definitely didn't force that. It was more something that came to us. And we'll get into that conversation, but I definitely think that's one of the bigger things that's interesting about our story.
So the tech buzz, that is really the core of what you guys, what formalized your business relationship beyond an investing relationship. Is that a fair way of putting it, or no? Or was there something before that?
No, that's actually not fair at all.
Okay. All right.
We did a lot of things together before the Tech Buzz, and actually, we worked together in a company that we put together, and that was called RF Capital. And that evolved into what's now formally Standard. And Standard, it started as a DAO, so that was mentioned before, and that's still a rhetoric, but the concept of what a decentralized autonomous organization, right? That's DAO for anyone that is new to that, is really a governance framework that is governed by the people, for the people, on behalf of the people, and it's written into code, right? And so that was always the principle that we came together in business, that the things that we do together, we want to benefit society, we want to benefit people, and we really like technology. We're pretty good at it, right? And we want to leverage these tools and empower other people with these tools. And so that was a lot of the ideation behind Standard. And we came together. We have another co-founder as well, Isaac, who he's not here at this time. And we raised money with Standard, and we're still operating that company. It's more of a hold co, and all of the operations that we do, they actually fall under Standard. And so, everyone has a mind map per se, or this maze in their business kind of operations or ideas, and ours led us to TechBuzz 2 years after starting Standard. And really, what we were doing in Standard was enabling and empowering business owners, right? That's the core competency. We're doing that with technology. It ends up with those business owners. They also hold shares in Standard, and there's a whole ecosystem effect that occurs there. But if you don't have a mouthpiece or a megaphone, then there's actually a lot that's left on the table. And so that's a lot of the things that led us to TechBuzz, to actually unlock that for not only the folks that were with us, but largely for ourselves too.
Right.
And that's actually where we met, is through Standard, and through a mutual friend, a really good mutual friend, Paul Daniel, out of Chicago, who you know as well, Rob. That's the impetus of our relationship.
So, Aaron, you pointed out in your talk right there, and by the way, that's the longest I've ever heard you talk without Martin interrupting. So that was I was wondering when I could tell. I mean, I could if I were able to measure blood pressure about Martin being able to not being able to speak for that long. I mean, I could feel it about to blow like a volcano. But anyway, so you mentioned about helping business people, right? So I think that's awesome, and especially in this particular economy, everybody's needing help. But when you say helping business people, what are some of the things you've seen manifest from your efforts?
I think there's a lot of things that manifest from our effort, but also there's a lot of things that we've seen that business people today, they try to leverage, let's say, the latest and greatest AI tools, and they're failing.
Yeah.
And that
And
was,
you said they're failing?
and they're failing. They're spending too much money.
Yeah.
They're losing their data. They do not know exactly what they need. And it's largely a lot of smoke and mirrors,
Yeah.
that a lot of unmet promises, right? And so these are some of the things that we're seeing, where you have real estate brokers, you have you actually have a lot of auto dealerships. You have a lot of folks that these are some of the top sales reps in the country, that they're trying to figure out how they can use AI and the promise of it to automate their business today, and to get better clients, to get better leads for assets, you name it. And a lot of the things that you're seeing, it's actually not, the capabilities aren't necessarily there, at least from the face of it. And you need to spend a lot more money than you think. You can't just turn on ChatGPT and go. And I think it's a big misconception that a lot of people actually don't get until they start to peel the onion.
Yeah, and I think, from my background, we're in the corporate world. I used to help my internal operational leaders unlock their business, and this is a $5 billion company, right? That I was the CFO over, and I think understanding that like output was so important, and it honestly a lot of times didn't necessarily matter what tool we were using. That's really what we're taking here, because I think that, especially coming from crypto, there was a lot of what he was saying, smoke and mirrors, right? There's a lot of things in crypto that just are honestly, they're not useful, right? They might be cool, but useful and cool are two completely different things. And so I think for us, we like to focus on the output always, right? So the difference for us, like when we're going into any conversation with a business owner, or even with what we're doing with TechBuzz, we're looking for what is the actual output, regardless of the technology, right? It could be a fax machine or AI that does it better. And if it's the fax machine, we're going to use the fax machine. And so that's something I think that we've just learned, right? Also, it's helped because we've been in these real business settings to understand what actually moves the needle truly, right? I think there's a lot of startups and a lot of people that are just starting fresh, and they're just going into the craze of cool. And that is where I don't see value. And it's hard, right, to watch that, because eventually, right, the cards fall. And as you saw with like FTX, for example, it doesn't last forever. So yeah, I think that's been definitely one of the North Stars we've held at the center of everything we've done, and it's helped actually make us successful for all of the businesses that we actually help.
Yeah. Is there a success story that jumps out?
Yeah. So, and with TechBuzz today, right? I think, some of the things that we found at an early stage, right, was in November of 2022, ChatGPT really started to get unlocked for the world. We were using it in our business. Uh, you have these crazy, monthly active user numbers, and you're starting to see so much news around it. You go to Google Trends, and you actually see in trends. If you go to any other trend that has nothing to do with technology, you go to real estate, um, you know, you go to really anything in the industry, and you start to see, oh, ChatGPT is ranking on all of these trends. And we actually did all of this research because it was quite interesting to us and relevant to our business. And we found that ChatGPT was the first unlock that really showed people what AI could do. And AI has been a thing for 50 years, 50,
Right.
the longest time, but no one really knew what it could do or how you could leverage it in your business. But everyone knew you should. There were movies on it, and you have finally ChatGPT came out, and now the conversations across so many different communities are centered around this one topic, and we knew that we had to launch something that captured that energy. And
Yeah.
so in launching TechBuzz, which that's what it was, it wasn't our first iteration, right? This was probably 8 iterations down a mental model that we had been perfecting in community building, in understanding trends and narratives in tech, and finally understanding, wow, this is the perfect synergy for businesses to actually hit our target demographic. And so TechBuzz launched actually July of 2023, and we're coming up on a year. And we quickly just gained so much traction. And so one of the biggest success cases for TechBuzz was understanding the market fit around news, and that everyone reads news and everyone wants to know what is the hottest thing, the hottest trend that is coming out today. And they will always look at their inbox for that. And if you are talking about that and if you have alpha around it, then they're not only looking at their inbox, they're also sharing this with their friends, and you can gain viral traction very quickly. And then it really devolves from there.
So we've been, through a couple of bull cycles, in the past with regards to the cryptos and the NFTs in the world, right? And I think it's important to address at this point in time why it's really more than just a plug and play when you want to engage or integrate AI into your respective business models, right? I think you guys are at a position through TechBuzz to be the voice of, I'd say, education and information and wisdom, for that matter, to really guide people towards what's long lasting. And I think a lot of the hype that we've experienced is just people hopping on and what's exciting, what's cool, what might very well be sexy. So all that being said, you made a point earlier. It's not just about plugging in Chat GPT and going with it, and then people are losing data by doing that. Why is that, right? Why are people losing data? And I think it's important for us to kind of educate people what happens when they plug into a model like Gemini or Chat GPT.
Yeah, absolutely. So with ChatGPT today, if you're paying $20 and you're getting, GPT 4.0, which is the newest one that they just unveiled, or if you're going into Claude, if you're not paying that upper threshold to unlock enterprise, then you're actually helping to train the model. So everything that you're typing in, if you write your business proposal, if you are looking for how you can actually unlock the value of the land that you're sitting on, or if you are looking for, you're uploading your Google Sheets and all of the leads that you have in your Google Sheets, and you're asking ChatGPT to figure out of all these leads which one I should be contacting today and how I should contact them. Well, you just gave it all those emails. You just gave it all the information that you have, compiled, paid a lot of money for potentially, all of your expertise, and it's helping to train the model and get other users and potentially expand its own knowledge base. You could push it past the edge of what its own competency was, and you don't get much of that value on the back of it, and that's a big issue. There's plenty of open source models. There's plenty of models that you can pay for that are enterprise grade. It's locally stored data stored on your computer, but most people don't know about that, and they want the ease, and they want an answer fast, and that's been one of the largest issues that we're seeing today, especially for business owners that don't quite realize that when they're using these models.
Yeah, I think, it gets into a very just interesting topic in general, which is, what should you as a person actually get paid for? And I mean, we think about this a lot. And I think, for training a model, right? For the ability for me to actually give, say, an OpenAI information that they now use to monetize in some capacity, the question is, right, is that something that should be compensated for? And it's the same question with even advertisements, right? Like today, when I get served an ad, arguably that is my time is money, right? If that is true, then why am I not actually getting paid for that, right? When you actually get an ad served to me. And so I think it gets into an interesting conversation because you do at the same time have people that just don't care about that because at the end of the day, they're getting value from these tools and they're okay with, opting into cookies, for example, that are tracking you on the web because it's potentially making your experience more valuable, right? I think that that's just a big debate that will continue to happen. However, I do think that as these technologies come out, like AI, it's that enable certain things to actually happen more efficiently. Like, for example, if I'm getting paid for my advertisements, really the only way you can do that efficiently is on a distributed ledger, right? Like crypto, like something that's automated that can, with a smart contract, have rules to say, hey, here's, funds from that apparatus. So yeah, I mean, you're asking the right question, Chad. I think it's interesting, right? The time that we're in and kind of where we're gonna go in the next 10 years as this industry progresses.
Yeah, I think that ultimately, if we look at the overall macroeconomics of, let's say, just the Web3 portion of things, and now AI being what it is, I think it's very important for businesses to understand that every use case entails a lot of deliberateness from a model perspective. You've got to be very deliberate in terms of what you want your output to be, right? Like the current chat GPTs of the world can't effectively and efficiently and accurately answer and produce the outcomes that you want or the output that you want if it's a very specific use case.
Right.
It's think of it, I envision it being a Google/Wikipedia, where everything is rather absorbed and it's just that. It's not necessarily an LLM that you could use for your business. And so I think that's a rather interesting topic to talk about. And yeah, very important in where we're at with the AI cycle.
Well, and I think what's interesting about it is right now, today, one of the biggest opportunities in the market, especially for AI, but more importantly, just automation in general, is these high value assets, right? Real estate, commercial real estate. This side of the market that you have people that are sitting in between these substantial transactions. And a lot of the times, especially in real estate, uh, these are normal people, and they're making $10,000, $50,000 a clip to sell this home, and it's all based on relationships. And what's interesting is AI does a really good job with math. It's starting to do a really good job with language, but to actually get it to a place to where you're actually conversating with the person and building a relationship, we're still so far away from that. And so now you have this big area where AI is taking the jobs of developers, taking the job of your lawyer, all these things. But the thing that you need to build more than anything, which is a relationship with a homeowner, a relationship with your tenant for leasing. AI's got nothing on you. And so these real estate agents, they have a huge market. They're using some of AI to help them in what they're doing in business. And actually, it's not the conversations; it's how to pinpoint and target who they should be talking to. And that's something that very few people are talking about today, outside of ChatGPT and these bigger topics around LLMs. And it's one that we see a huge opportunity to help a lot of these business owners, which that's what these brokers are in their process, and that actually is a huge value across the board.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll tell you, if we could rewind the clock back and change the name and not call it artificial intelligence, right? And Martin, you can relate to this from the corporate world. I noticed as you um, elevate in an executive stature of a company, your IQ is important, but if you really want to advance into the senior levels, you have to have an EQ, right? Which is, Aaron, what you're equating to, right? That emotional quotient, right? So Martin, speak a little bit about that, your background there, but also what Aaron was just displaying there. What connects there?
Yeah, I mean, there's these interesting debates and arguments that are happening right now just in tech and stuff like that. And one of them is AI. Like, is this AI? Like, what we're looking at is it actually AI? Interesting conversation, but it's one of the arguments that I honestly don't care to dive into, because at the end of the day, right, it's still about outcome. And so I don't care if you call it, PI, GI, it doesn't matter what it is, as long as whatever that thing is doing is actually helping me in my business from a tool perspective,
Mm.
it is so beneficial, right? And that's super important, I think, for business owners to understand, because if you get caught up in this conversation around, oh, well, like that's not AI, and you're not using AI in your business, you're losing that North Star of what is the outcome. And then I think, to Aaron's point and what you're talking about regarding, EQ, and um, it really does come down to that, right? At the end of the day, it still comes down to people. I think it's people that actually create the technologies. I think that we're pretty far, right, from a lot of the true sci-fi things that you're seeing in the movies. There's a lot that still needs to get done. With that said, I do, I've lived the cycle of from the 2000s and understanding when Amazon came out and where we are. And so, I definitely completely understand that if we look up in 10 to 20 years, the quote unquote AI that we're even talking about today is vastly different, right? And I do think that while that's important for people to understand, because they should have that North Star, it's also just as important to understand, don't overspend and overinvest in buzzwords, right? Still try to come back to understanding that, okay, it's people, right? And how can I better, my relationships in business? And if it's AI, then let's use it. If it's something else, right, let's use that.
Yeah. So, you bring up something very important, and what goes through my mind, and this is something that has been around for a really long time, the difference between knowledge and wisdom, right? So, when I hear about ChatGPT, it's just in my non-technical mind compared to the three of you, it's just like this super advanced Google search, right? It's
Yeah.
just more data, more computing, faster. And but that's knowledge, right? And wisdom is the application of knowledge, which really kind of tilts more toward what I'm interested in is the generative AI, meaning that there's actually some kind of program that can do something creative that reduces the overall man hours that have to be touched on something, right? But when you look at the progression, right, and you just said something about spending dollars. Look, capital's tight in certain areas. I see pockets of it that the capital is pretty well. Frankly, AI. I mean, this is kind of like 1999. If you have a company that had .com at the end, you had money just thrown at you. It didn't matter what you did, right? And so it's kind of like the same with AI. But because you guys have a genuine care for seeing people successful in business, if there was one thing out there that you could just simply just grab somebody by the shoulders and say, stop doing this, what would that be?
It's a good question.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. When ChatGPT came out, you had this really good understanding, if you were using it a lot, what the voice of ChatGPT was. And and it really hasn't changed that much. I think Claude does a really good job to like if I'm writing anything, right? I do a lot of writing. I'm a published researcher, all that kind of stuff, peer review, and I love to write. If I'm going to write anything, I write with Claude. Claude does a really great job with it, but there's so many people today that are using ChatGPT and they copy paste their ChatGPT outputs into their LinkedIn feed, into their Twitter feed, into their blog posts, and you can tell right away that this was written by an AI. And almost 95% of the things that am putting out, it's critiqued by an AI. Like AI, I use it. It's my tool. It's my peer review. But you'll never know that my actual output was AI. And so I think there's so many business owners today that they are relying on the artificial quote unquote intelligence to do their writing for them, and they're copy pasting, and it's evident. And that's one of the things that, it's a phase, definitely. But it's one of the things that I'm seeing that take that second review and it'll actually do you a lot of value.
Well, yeah, and it's actually, thank you. That's good because, like for example, when you're in college, you are getting the same degree as everyone else. And the question becomes, when you get the same degree as 3,000 other people that are sitting right next to you, how do you actually differentiate yourself when you're in the job market? And that is what we're seeing now with businesses where they are using ChatGPT and it's all just shelling out the same exact content. And now to differentiate yourself in the market, you're just slinging the same stuff as everyone else. And so it's an opportunity, right? Because while everyone is zigging that way, if you zag enough, right? If you can actually have the mantra to not just simply use ChatGPT, potentially use it to enhance your actual brain, right? From something original that you actually have that is tangible, that's from your wisdom, that's from your idea maze, etc. That is what I actually think, to answer your question, these business owners should look towards, because what they're getting sold on is use ChatGPT, use this product, use this stuff, and all that happens is now it gets drowned out and diluted in the content marketplace in every area. Whereas I think, just like Gary Vee says, attention is so key. And how do you actually get the attention of people? It's not with the status quo. It is with absolutely something different than that.
Yeah. It's funny. My youngest son's here for the summer. He plays basketball at a university up in Boston, and I can't tell you the number of mornings before school we were at the gym at 5:30 in the morning, and I wouldn't do it every day, but most times whenever there's a lag, in between, when he was tired or getting a drink, I'd say, "So, what are you doing?" And his answer, because I've asked it so many times, he goes, "Paying the price," right? And so it was one of these things you can't replace the grind, right? There's benefit to actually putting the sweat equity in, right? And I understand people wanting to do something faster, more efficient, but when you're just simply lazy, both physically and intellectually, that shows through, and that's what Aaron was, what you're saying. It's so obvious. All right. So you guys are coming up. I don't want to be so tight-ringed around Tech Buzz because it's obvious you guys are enterprising and entrepreneurial. You're coming up on the July is your anniversary, but July 2025. What does that look like for Aaron and Martin?
Yeah, we're always talking. This guy will send me a message. It'll be like 1 a.m. And my wife will tell me, is that Martin again?
Okay, so I have a question before you get to your answer. All right, so you guys meet. Aaron, you're married, right? Martin, were you single, dating? What was your deal?
No. I've actually been married now for 10 years.
Okay, so you were married before Aaron.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. All right.
Say that.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to see. I just had this picture in my brain that Aaron, that your wife's like, I really wish Martin would find somebody to get married, but that's just not the case. So we don't have to go there. All right. So back to July 2025. What does it look like for you guys?
Yeah. So it was actually, I think, last weekend or the weekend before. And, we put a lot of things in the vision or on the vision board. And we do this with Isaac too. Actually, it's kind of funny because out of the three of us, obviously there's three. Isaac is our other co-founder. Isaac's a little bit older than us. Isaac sets a pretty substantial vision. And so that's actually what drew all of us together. It's surrounding a large vision that we can, impact the world, right? Or we can change some really big part of society, obviously to benefit people, but at the same time, we'll make a lot of money. and if we make that change, then that's super impactful. So we've wanted to be technologists. We've been around technology for so long, finance, all of that. And he said, super random text. It was like on a Sunday night. And he said, we're going to be the best marketers in the world. And when we went into this, I didn't know what it really meant to be a marketer. 5 years ago, that's not something I went to school for. Martin didn't go to school for that. And that is something that what we're finding, if you look at the Web3 space, 95% of it, it's marketing. Bitcoin, it's all marketing.
Yeah.
You've got, these folks that launch these tokens. And if you look at GameStop right now, that's a huge narrative that, Roaring Kitty, he's got this $1 billion portfolio again in options. And those are coming up pretty soon. And again, he can play that market, especially his last win, because he was a really good marketer. He was really good at bringing together communities and pushing them towards one way or the other, and also gauging the intent of those communities. So the thing that we're most focused on, it's intention, and it's understanding what people want. And if we can do that right, then we're in 2025, July, we're going to be able to serve up to people in real time exactly what you want when you want it, without you knowing that we knew that. And so what that really means is it's getting past or getting towards, this idea that, Google or any of these other big juggernauts were doing, but in a more micro stance.
Yeah, I think it comes down to an era of push versus pull. I think that Google and the era of technology that we have like grown up in has always been the tech giants and or businesses are pushing to you, and that's advertisements on LinkedIn, that's even on Google, right, etc. I think that now when you have a technology like AI, whether it's AI or not, there is a opportunity to have more of a pull into you as an individual. And I think that that's a very, interesting concept, because at the end of the day, I think value is really like driven by the needs of people being satisfied. And so if I need something, whatever that is, right now I go out and I search for it, right? I look for something in the ecosystem. I think that what a lot of people, there's a lot of companies working on this, but ideally, right, there is some intention that actually gives you exactly what you need at the most opportune time. And so I think for us, we're definitely not naive to know that we're going to tackle the entire market, right, the entire globe, but there's specific industries and elements that we are properly geared for to enter that market, where we can have a whole segment of people that can receive what they truly need in a more optimized manner than you've ever seen before.
Yeah. So I think, what we found with TechBuzz, there's a lot of places that you can go to produce news, a newsletter. You can produce this content. And one of them, we actually use Beehive now. We use a lot. There's Ghost, there's Substack. There's a lot of avenues to do this. And when you're distributing this content on a daily basis, doesn't matter. We have 750,000 people that receive our content on a weekly basis, sometimes up to 5 times a week. And every time we send something out, we get we get to see who's clicking, we're getting to see who's opening this stuff. But the real delta there is when you can translate those clicks into the intention of that person and their proclivity to potentially buy something, right? Their ability to understand what they're wanting or what they need, or even their lack of knowledge around something, right? Sometimes that's a huge thing. And we spend hours perfecting what we send out, not the content, the subject line, right? We've spent hundreds of hours perfecting just the subject line so that people open an email. We spent hundreds of hours perfecting not the content that we're distributing, but the way that content is actually read. The inflection in the sentence, the tone, because at the end of the day, if someone's not opening the email, if someone's not clicking through or looking at a page for a certain amount of time, then we actually don't get any value. And so those are the types of things that we started to unlock for ourselves. And then we start to unlock the map on all of these people in our audience. These are business owners. These are founders. These are entrepreneurs. These are also consumers and enterprise, executives. And they all need something. And we have been starting to serve them what they need at that time, just from a simple newsletter.
Yeah. So we've all seen, and that's some really, really good points, right? And I think we've seen, if we trace back the progression of where we've come from, let's say the social community standpoint, social media standpoint, right? From the late 2000s, going into 2010s with Facebook, Instagram. I mean, no businesses were on social media, up until really the early teens, 2000 teens, right? Where they started seeing a massive movement or adoption of users, individuals, going into these respective spaces. So, where you're at with your current business cycle with TechBuzz, and we see, how quickly as technologists, right, seeing cycles, we've seen how quickly, I'd say end users, retail users like ourselves, migrate into a particular or move or adopt towards a particular, technology stack or platform, how are you guys positioning yourselves to remain relevant, but more importantly, I think, get ahead of that curve where, look, this is where we're at today, and to your point, in 2025 we're going to be the best marketers out there, but what platforms, what technology stacks are you guys, let's say, using or leveraging in order for you guys to get ahead, in front of these consumers?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't go into the technology as much as I would go into the strategy. And I say that because the technology is just getting easy. Like it's honestly, it's, we're getting to a point where if we want to do something, we can. Now, I will say, like what you noted on is very interesting because, like, if you look at social media right now, it's all about more followers, more this, more that. And I genuinely think, personally, that we are going into um, an era where we're going to go back to more meaningful connections. I think that, sure, the followers, they'll continue, but it continues to get more and more just diluted. And when something is new, it's like fresh, it's cool, it's fun, everyone loves it. And I mean, we've seen this cycle even with like Instagram, right? You don't see like millennials are on Instagram, but Gen Z, they're on TikTok, right? And there's going to be something after TikTok, and there's this perpetual cycle where things get old, and then you have to pivot. And so I think with what we're going after for us is the meaningful connection around our community, right? Where we have this collection of business owners that already follow us, 700,000. And how do we actually, start to connect the dots between people using data in a way that potentially they would never have um, understood or got to by themselves. And I think, like, that comes from our idea maze, because what we do often is we get on a call with random people and talk to them. And what happens is those people, some of them become some of our best friends, or they just become some of our best business relationships in general. And it might not be right there, right? It's not a short term thing. It could be this long term apparatus. Um, but it's definitely one of the things that we've understood is absolutely valuable, and that we're really going towards through Tech Buzz to really create these meaningful connections between people.
Yeah, and when you see there's so many businesses that they actually have a ton of expertise in their field, but they suck at delivering their message. They suck at marketing and they suck at getting clients. But once they have that client, they're in there for life, because those business owners especially, they have so much intention for what they do. And they have a capacity for a certain amount of relationships, and when they get those relationships, they treasure them and they facilitate their needs so well. And so what we're seeing today is that these businesses, if they start to unlock their expertise online, and that could be through podcasts, but I do think that podcasts, they're actually, that is also becoming something in the market that if you don't do a really good job at speaking, you don't have to. You can write your stuff, right? And there's so many people that they think that they should do a podcast, and so they start it, and no one listens to their stuff, right? And obviously here we are doing a podcast, and and we're throwing ourselves to the wolves, but it's a beautiful thing. And you also have these folks that they never thought that someone would want to read what they were writing online. And so most people in that space, they don't really understand how to start. And I think for business owners especially, there's so much news today that if they just started tacking on to the news, the things that people actually want to read, and they bring their spin to it, then they'd actually start to be relevant in today's narrative. And that's something that we're helping business owners figure out how they can do to unlock the value of their business. And now instead of just selling their product, you're also educating a potential customer or your customers today. You're relevant to them, and 6 months down the road, they might want to use your widget or your service. And so these are the kinds of things that we see with business owners today that they can start to unlock, especially with ChatGPT if they're leveraging it correctly.
Well, yeah, and so there's some interesting things too. Have you guys ever seen or remember the 1997 ad from Apple, the "Here's to the crazy ones"? Okay,
Yes.
yeah. So it's interesting because Steve Jobs, right? He gets up and he talks about how um, they may have all the best chips, the fastest processor, the this, the that, and at the end of the day, right? If that's what they were selling, it actually it just doesn't work, right? Because what people actually want to buy in that case, the ad was, here's to the crazy ones, here's to the ones that actually think that they can change the world.
Hmm.
And the only way you can actually change the world is if you actually do. And basically what he was saying is, we think the people that can change the world should be using our computers, right?
Right.
And that ad absolutely connected and resonated where it was the think different, right? And so let's not use the IBM, let's actually use the Mac. And I think there's several other examples similar to that, but I think people forget that, right? It's not that they don't know that, it's that they try to talk about their technology and talk about how, I have the fastest this and the quickest this, when, to be honest, right, like the reason you buy a BMW, for example, might not be because of the fastest engine or anything. It's the ultimate driving machine. It's there's something in your history, stuff like that. And so, like, when we say we want to be the best marketers, it's not just marketing, right? It's actually helping tie that knot, right? That business owners don't actually truly understand. Because I think at the end of the day, again, I think technology, it's getting easier where the lines between, fast, they don't really matter, right? My Wi-Fi at 100 megabytes or 200 megabytes, do I feel it? Yeah, sure, I do. But it's getting to a place where that's not why they're buying, right? They're buying because of you as a business owner. They're buying because of what you stand for. They're buying for all these things that, right, your consumer actually cares about. Um, and so, yeah, I think that we sit on top of the technologists. It's that's how we like to think of it. We're
Hmm.
not trying to go after the next thing. We're just helping unlock and enable the next thing. And if you're always doing that, I think there's always a space for you because who knows? In a year, we could go into quantum computing, and that's the next craze.
Right.
And great, let's talk about it, right? That's absolutely something that we're ready for, and we can talk to.
I know something that Rob and I discuss quite often, and I'd say rather significantly, is the meaningful aspect of things. I really love the fact that you touched that on, because in an era where social media followers were effectively worshipped, and the amount thereof where influencers are put on a pedestal, where look, what they say is word, if you want to put it that way, right? It is law, or it is the fad. um, I think is slowly fading rather quickly. People are now have been emptied out. The time of quick kind of instantaneous interaction that doesn't entail your attention is no longer cutting it. People are feeling purposeless. People are feeling lonely. People are feeling, I'd say, uh, just just nothing. And so going back into the whole meaningful relationships and leveraging a platform like yours, TechBuzz, leveraging current available technologies and then potential new iterations and where technology is going. Like NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang, everyone knows him, loves him now, right? It's this amazing feat that he's accomplished. Believes that the next iteration would be a 3D kind of internet component where 50% by 2030, 50% of the internet's going to go there. But one has to ask why, above and beyond just the hype. Why is it going that direction? And in Rob and I's conversation, it comes back down to proximity, meaningful relationships. Being able to effectively engage with someone outside of just a screen or a text box, and actually being able to walk up to someone just like we do in Fortnite. If you're a gamer, right? You're hanging out. Perfect example. My brother-in-law, he's constantly hanging out with his brothers from the other side of the country on Fortnite. Just this is their spend time. This is their time that they spend together on a daily basis. Just to connect, because they want that proximity, because it is meaningful. So I think what you guys are doing from a meaningful relationship or connectivity standpoint has a lot of sense to it, and more importantly, I believe that the consumers are ready for this next iteration, because it has been so, um, I'd say just done, right? Like just taxing to keep up an image where you just give, but you don't get nothing back in return.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just finished Michael Lewis's book, Going Infinite, right? It's about the whole Brackman blow up. And interestingly, I learned a lot about altruism, and actually it was cast in a negative light only because it was so tightly associated with Brackman. And so, but let's kind of land this plane how we started in the crypto space, right? So, what do you guys see happening in crypto and blockchain? Because that was what your early connection. Because there's certainly, AI is taking the spotlight, but there's certainly a lot of attention, and rightly so, on cryptocurrency and blockchain.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's still here, right? And it's not going away. And I think people don't really understand that in 10, 20 years, it will absolutely change the way things are done. I think that there's significant use cases for cross-border transactions, right? And little things that you think are very easily done that just aren't happening today. And it does have to do with the technology. And I think that blockchain does provide a lot of those mechanisms to be able to overcome those things. Like, for example, right, if you're going to pay 1 million people 1 cent, you're not going to do that, or you're not going to want to do that via some traditional ledger, because it's just not efficient. And obviously, blockchain arguably isn't efficient yet either, right? There's things that are still happening with that technology, but absolutely, over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, it's gonna have another cycle, and not only a cycle, but more so adoption in places that are actually valuable from a use case perspective. And I don't know though. What I don't know is if people actually feel it or see it as much as they had. And I don't even necessarily know if that's important, because I think that there are large companies integrating it right now where you honestly would not even know, right? You would not even know that behind the scenes blockchain is enabled. And there's no reason for you to know necessarily as a consumer, because from a UI perspective and from how it actually interacts, they don't want any impact, right, to you. Um, and so there's still valid investments in that space. There's absolutely, I think, new unlocks from a workflow perspective that will come out of crypto and blockchain. Yeah.
Yeah, there's stuff that hasn't worked though. Starbucks, they ended their NFT program, right? That you didn't hear that in the news necessarily. That was in the cycle for a couple days. There's a lot of things that enterprise has been trying to do to capture that crypto native audience that's currently there, and they failed like miserably. Nike, they got 180 million in fees from their NFT project, but they put it under, right? That's no longer valid. And there's a lot more things though that we're going to start to see unlocked in the crypto space because of crypto, but also because of AI. And so there's a couple things. One of them, it's the decentralized infrastructure. They call it DePIN, decentralized physical infrastructure. That's gonna blow up in a big way. You have, and whether it's effective or not, that's not why. But theoretically, it should be very effective, where you have your GPUs that uh, Jensen, he's creating all this GPU infrastructure. Well, what if it's decentralized and not owned wholly by Microsoft and Google, and not actually something where the normal person can't leverage their M3 chip on their MacBook, right? Mm-hmm. So now you're going to start to see a lot more of that, if you haven't already seen it. But also, if you think about this talk of AI agents and all these AI quote unquote bots that are going to start doing your work for you, you can start launch a company that's run with 100 agents, and the agents have their agent bosses and all these things. How do you think those agents are going to do payments online? They're probably going to use crypto and crypto wallets, because good luck for one of those things to get a bank account or a credit card, right? And so those are the kinds of things that start to get really exciting. How that starts to work, who starts to have the priority in a transaction, an AI bot or a human, right? And you start to see this dissection between potentially two worlds, and that's something that we're privy to.
Yeah, and I like to his point. Let's say you're getting ads at home right now on your Amazon device, on your TV, your CTV, and what if you're actually getting paid for the ads that are getting served up to you? That is also something that really is unlocked with crypto, and because you wouldn't want it to be a traditional rail, you're talking about millions of transactions, millions of ledgers. So there's a lot of things that are coming, and I think I think the consumers will see it last. What's happening right now from like a true usage perspective is happening at the business level. Like for example, MasterCard, right? And these companies are actually trying to integrate it to optimize their existing workflows.
Yeah, it's when I hear the big company names, and I have a feeling that when you hear the term big tech, it's almost being used more in the pejorative, right? That it's really kind of a power structure that the average person isn't plugged into, because at the end of the day, it's autonomy. I mean, the computing power is awesome of what you can do with blockchain, but you remove the autonomous component of it, then I don't know how anxious the average technical guy is going to pay attention, or is going to stay engaged in it. And look, all you have to do is look at, you go all the way up to a top level of Federal Reserves, right? The Federal Reserves of all the world banks, they create money out of nowhere, right? And so that's in my mind where the real battle is going to be waged. Is Joe Lunchbox, Joe Technician, autonomous, understands all this, and then you got the big money centers that don't want that autonomy, right? Because you take that autonomy away, then they can't print fractional money, and things kind of collide in the middle.
Yeah.
But from the pure computing side, do you think AI helps blockchain significantly, or is blockchain already on a path of its own development that AI really isn't going to have a big impact?
It helps the understanding of why it's necessary, because if you look at the sci-fi movies and you see streaming payments that are happening, like, and this is going back to Ready Player One. This is a movie that came out in, I think it was like 2014, years ago. And what were they doing? They're in this digital world, and they're actually getting paid to be in this digital world and play games and all of these things. Um, AI really comes hand in hand with blockchain to enable that exact use case, right? You can't actually have one without the other, because there's a lot of automation that actually has to go on in that world to create the value that's necessary, right?
Hmm.
And so I think blockchain came out. It was this ledger approach, right? There's a lot of uh, normal use cases, but then what AI really does is it says, oh, now I could see why I need that technology. And it is to pay, right, all these bots. It's to pay all these potential wallets that need to get paid millions of transactions in an instant. You just wouldn't be able to do that on normal rails.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have now languages being tokenized, and that's actually what it's being called, right? In you're using tokens to actually use ChatGPT, and you have context windows and all of these types of things, and so really we're in like the context of an industrial revolution. We're turning we found power, we found electricity, which is like electrons, right now, and this is something that actually Jensen was talking about too in one of his recent talks. And now you're turning those electrons into tokens that potentially the most efficient users of those tokens, they're actually these bots, these NPCs, non-playable characters in games. They're your computer, but you're still needing to use that. And so, what does the currency look like to actually access or unlock that economy? The currency definitely looks like something that is electronic, but also how does it get distributed, in a fair way, in across borders, all of these things. So those are the types of things that blockchain can solve. But also, you have a number of areas in that path that people haven't figured it out what the best case is. You have regulators that they're declining these bills around blockchain. They just declined in the U.S. The bill around CBDCs, which is a great thing because now the U.S. can't print money that is tracking us as well. But there's still so much that big government has not figured out of how to unlock this for people, and so that presents a lot of opportunity for a lot of people in this world.
Yeah. Well, Aaron and Martin, this has been awesome, right? I mean, I really feel honored that the average person who's wanting to learn more about technology, as well as someone who's very advanced, that has this ability to change their own small world and the big world in a bigger way, to know that they have a resource like you all that can help them. Godspeed to you all. I hope that your launch that's coming up here is wildly successful, and we'll look forward to having another conversation just to see the different dimensions you guys have grown to. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks,
Yeah,
guys.
thanks, guys.
It's been a pleasure.
Savvy,
Yeah.
Sage. Great. What is this, episode number 1? Love it, guys.
Yeah. It's good stuff. It's good stuff.